I brought this up last time, showing how the days of creation correlate to the millenniums.
which was
But
amazing, by the way.
oh, thank you. And one of the things that and you introduced me to this because I bought your Millennial Kingdom book several years ago, and you talked about the 10 weeks of Enoch. And I mentioned this in our last podcast, but everyone tries to say they're 700-year periods that equals 7,000 years, and so all this stuff has to fit in that, and it never made any sense to me. So you pointed out it's not about the duration of time; it's about events, things that will happen more than time periods.
Well,
And so,
and one of the things that was helpful in this is understanding the studying the zodiac too, and people assume that each of these different constellations, when we talk about it like a clock, that
yeah,
that it's just an equal division of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but that's not true. These constellations, some are bigger than others,
yeah,
and so you can't put, you can measure the time. You can look at how much along the sun is in each one of these, but it doesn't. You can't, without being able to look up there and see. You understand what I'm saying? So it's
mhm,
I think it's the same thing with Enoch's 10 weeks. That it's very much like going through the zodiac, and there might even be a little bit overlapping, but I don't know where the clear cuts are. But yeah, I
yeah,
do think that some are longer than others. But I pulled my I probably grew gray even more so. I spent a week just every day. I won't say tormented, but it was like a Tom and Jerry, like a Looney Tunes thing where I was getting bested by math every single time, and I tried with calculators, all the different, tried everything, and nothing worked
yep,
at all.
nothing. Although I think it's real interesting that Messiah comes on the 6th week in the sixth age. So there is that alignment, right? But it doesn't else all hold together well, But so what I did is I took the weeks and I lined them up with the cosmic week. So if you can scroll down so they can see the 10 weeks of Enoch, um, yeah, at the very bottom,
Up
yeah,
there, right
right
there.
there, yeah. And some millenniums have up to 2 weeks in them, okay. And like week two, you have great weakness increases, and then week two also goes into millennium three, where man will be saved, but weakness will return. So that's an overlap week. That week starts in the second age, and then it concludes in the third age, right? So it's not an exact thing. But if
Yeah.
you keep going down, when you hit day six,
Oh,
it
sorry.
talks about a man will be resurrected and the temple will be destroyed. And then you've spent a lot of time talking about this on your channel. And a great apostasy will arise in a corrupt generation. At the end of this week, the first resurrection will take place. So what's that talking about? It's talking about the there's going to be a great apostasy, and then you're going to have the first resurrection. And then what blew me away was that the 10 weeks of Enoch actually talk about the millennial kingdom. And
Yep.
you pointed this out, and I'll read those because it's exciting. But it says the saints will rule the earth and build civilization. A house will be built for the king, and the kingdom will achieve dominion, and all these type of things. And it's like, wow, that's beautiful. But then afterwards, and we're going to come back to this later because this sets up a stage for the next phases, what we're talking about today. In the 10th week, and I put it in day 8, it says this week begins with the execution of judgment. And I think we need to hold on to that word execution, because you can make a judgment on something, but it doesn't mean the execution day has come. There's a difference between a judgment and execution of following through with that. And then after that, and this is in the book of Enoch, this execution and judgment is specifically on the angels and the watchers. So that's interesting to point out that this happens after the millennial kingdom period.
I wanted to also point out too what I found in this. Now, what you'd mentioned, the week of apostasy, said I commented
Yeah.
on that a lot. Almost every single person that every time I was looking at this originally, they all moved that way further in the future, because to them, leading up to whatever date, like, whether it was Constantine or whatever, that was all the good stuff, right? That was, the preservation of the church. And I'm looking at that going, no, that is the apostasy
Right.
that he's talking about here. The
That's right.
apostasy happened really quickly, very early on, as the Alexandrian church and the church of Antioch is kind of a toss up. according to the research I
Yeah.
looked at. But the Alexandrian church and then the Roman church, it started very, very, very quickly as they were pushing away from Yah's righteous ways,
Right.
starting with the Jew tax and all sorts of things like that. But another thing I found, which I don't know if it was real popular with people, because it seems like people, the counter research or historical revisionist whatever society really likes looking at Arthurian literature, which I do too. I really enjoy it. I spent a lot of time this last summer in Wales mapping places out. I haven't given a presentation on it yet, but I have mapped out all these different places that I think I found the historical Avalon. And when I say that, I wasn't the first person to discover it, but I'm going off of other people's research. But what I found was that, and I've talked about this for a few years, that in Merlin's prophecy, they talk about the red dragon versus the white dragon, and the red dragon represents Arthur and Pendragon, and it would come to an end at the death of Arthur, and then the white dragon would come. The red dragon would eventually return and take out the white dragon, and it says that then the red dragon would trample over the gardens and the places of the white dragon, and we know that lasted 1,000 years. It started with the death of Arthur in 537, and it went all the way to the 1500s when the House of Tudors raised up the red dragon again and went in and started destroying all the Millennial Kingdom structures, or I should say medieval, if you want, Gothic structures. And I got to go over there and investigate dozens of these places that, I was looking for the original footprint of these places. And okay, this is what King Henry, I could see what they changed, the Church of England and all that kind of stuff.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I love. Yeah, and the research is so important to get this out, because you mentioned what he died in 537 A.D. Gee, what happened around 536 A.D.? So I mean, it lines up so beautifully, and that's one of the things that I appreciate about your channel and your research is we both agree that you can't just take history and throw it out the window. Obviously, we live in an age of deception, and you can change the narrative over time periods, but there's things that are in those cultures that did happen. There's a reason why there's passed down, and there's monuments to those. You can't just get rid of that stuff and say it's not there.
Right. Quick story. Now, my biggest pet beef against historical revisionism, I might be saying this live on air for the first time, though I've been telling people privately this for many, many months now, is that historical revisionists love to say that our controllers revised and changed history. They accuse them of this, but then they even do a worse crime. They just throw it all out the window and just make crap up. They just will make up whatever they want. I'm like, you're projecting onto people what you're actually doing. And so what I was going down that path, and in going down that path, I reversed course. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to advocate the Millennial Kingdom already happened, I'm going to take the hard route and try, and show actual history. And I actually found it fit like a glove. But I'll give you a quick example of things I can't disprove. In England, I spent 3 months there going around and talking to people in pubs, right? Like going and talking to real people. And you're finding there that the historical narrative is that the Anglo-Saxons came over in the 500s, which is what I've been advocating, and they attacked the Welsh people. The Welsh people are the original people there, and they pushed them up into Wales, and the Anglo-Saxons took over the rest. Well, the Anglo-Saxons were only around for 500 years, and then the Normans came over. They're actually the French, and they claim that every single cathedral, castle, everything that is there was built by the Normans, which is kind of interesting. They say the Anglo-Saxons contributed nothing. And the Normans to this day have yet to be conquered. They are still the ruling class. It's actually a line of French kings that rule over Britain, according to their genealogy. But I couldn't disprove it. I went around looking. I could see the Anglo-Saxon structures. I could see the Normans. I could see that that the Welsh language, and they still speak Welsh to this day. And history is it's easy. It's one thing to take the easy route and just say, I'm just going to throw it all out and make up whatever crap I want.
Right.
It's a lot harder to actually disprove history. You can find holes in it. You can find, you can see where they fudge the numbers and they move things around. You can do that. anyways, I'm going on a
Yeah,
rant.
no, it's well, and that's what we're trying to do, even with this conversation about the Nephilim, is we want to do our due diligence to paint a perspective of history that is not something that we're just making up. And some of it is, I believe in conspiracies and that stuff is altered. I definitely believe that governments who control things can have a alteration of narrative over history. For example, one of the things that I was blown away by is, I'm sure you're familiar with Gregory of Tours, his writings.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not familiar
and
with them.
yeah, but what blew me away is that his accounts are the first accounts that I've been able to find where the saints start physically manifesting, and doing stuff, and that doesn't occur until the 6th century. And I'm
Yeah,
like, interesting, 6th century, you
I
know?
would. I wish I had pictures to show you now. It was one of my favorite cathedrals I went to was in let's see, where was it? It was just outside of Pershore. Oh, man, what was it called? It was where King Richard the no, King John was buried there, and King Henry VIII's older brother Arthur, who should have been, king, but he died young. It escapes me now, but it was this amazing cathedral that I went back to
Mm.
several times, and I would just sit there for like 2 hours, and I
Wow.
would just like look up, and I would just, it was like a Where's Waldo painting every time you see something new, right? I
Mhm.
can't believe I just said Where's Waldo was a painting, like it's an art, like a masterpiece,
Yeah, not even
some
close.
people like Picasso and Degas, but I'm really into Where's Waldo. That's my dig. No, but
Uh,
uh,
top
and,
good.
yeah, and it's right. They should just turn Where's Waldo into a museum. But anyways, the ceiling, it was phenomenal because it shows you it shows you the angels up there looking down at you. But mixed in with the angels, you will
Yep.
find Abraham, Moses, right? And that's
Yep.
just starting. You find all these Old
Yeah,
Testament saints, but then you find the New Testament
the
saints up there.
apostles.
And not
Yep.
only that, you find Saint
Yep.
Barbara, you find Saint George, you find Saint Catherine. You start going down the list, and they're all up there,
Yeah,
and you're like, oh my goodness, it's the divine council. They are
that's right. That's
literally
right.
up there now. The 144,000 and the elders and all that, they are now the ruling class. They have taken over. The 70 were fired, from their positions, and now they are ruling with Messiah, and they're actually looking down and they're communicating with people. So that was a huge, like, uh, beautiful revelation that I had in that church.
Well, what's interesting, I brought this up last time when we were talking about Killism, is that when the Catholics and Eastern Orthodox kind of took Christianity over, they implemented all millennialism. But they have, especially Eastern Orthodox has, and Catholics do this too, they altered eschatology to say that they were the millennial kingdom. And one of the doctrines that started to shift, and this is how they would explain and justify the paintings that you saw, is that the millennial reign started at the cross and resurrection of Christ. And so they would say that the saints started entering the council at the cross of Christ. The problem is you have the stoning of Stephen, you have the murder or the killing of James the apostle. There's no early church writings that says that, hey, yeah, they're up there now. There's none. There's none. That all points to around 500 AD, when they understood that the first resurrection would occur, which lines up with the 10 weeks of Enoch and everything like that. So the artwork there actually lines up with Killism also, and not an altered eschatology of all millennialism. And I would say more so because some of those paintings, they have crowns. The saints have crowns when
Yeah.
they're up there, which is not supposed to happen at the cross of Christ. That even a basic reading of Revelations lets you know that happens later. So why in the world are you just trying to be, hopeful in the future, or does that represent an actual divine order that's present when that was built and painted? And
Yeah,
and I tend to
a
go
lot
ahead.
of medieval paintings will show that. And what happened with the cults of Mary, they started taking over in the 1400s, but by the time you get to the Renaissance. So I went to the Vatican this year too. I actually saw the
Mm,
Pope. It was the most brutal day of the entire trip, but just being out there in the sun,
yeah.
and the nuns were just, there were like gangs of nuns, like literal gangs, and they will bowl you over. They were brutal. But They talk about the gangs of Europe, but I'm telling you, the gangs of nuns. But the thing is like with the Vatican, whatever existed at the Vatican in the 1400s no longer exists. They will tell you they built the whole they tore down what was there and rebuilt everything. And so a lot of the artwork that you're seeing, even in a lot of these cathedrals, I'd look at that and I could just pick it off. I'd be like, okay, that's medieval, that's Enlightenment era. And people would hear me say that, like, where and I actually would have people like following me. I actually had people I didn't know follow me around as their tour guide. It was so fun, and I'm just like pointing things out. But what my point is that with they started putting the crown exclusively on Mary the Mother, and that is something that started happening during the quote unquote counter Reformation with the Catholic Church. And but in the Middle Ages, they were putting crowns on the others as well, and you do see that.
Yes. And so, and I think that's so fascinating. And we're going to get into this a little later on. But I love this sidetrack here. This is great information.